Hello everybody. If you want to read all the stories in full, please go to www.steveuk.blog. Thank you. Short story 640, The Last Song of Emberwood, Homophones 8, Intermediate. The climb was unforgiving, a bitter wind whipping through the ancient trees of Emberwood. It was a miserable course for anyone to take, especially in this weather, but I had no choice. My grandfather's cryptic letter, a strange mix of history and riddles, had sent me here on a quest to find a hidden treasure. The path before me was a dark tunnel of gnarled branches and thorns. As I pushed forward, a sharp clack of stone against stone echoed from a hidden crevice. I froze, my hand clutching the worn, leather cord that held my map. I knew this forest had a reputation for its ghostly choir, but I'd always dismissed it as a myth. My grandfather's letter was a difficult cloze test of sorts, a puzzle I had been trying to solve for weeks. It spoke of a place where a harmonic chord would unlock the path, and a key made of black dust would reveal the final clue. I had deciphered most of it, but the last two parts were a mystery. I found the final letter in his desk drawer, an old sealed envelope. It contained a small, coarse leather pouch. Inside, a strange, dark powder like powdered coal filled it. He also left me a note saying, "Bring back what is due," and on the back of the envelope, a small note read, "Check your spelling and the check will be clear." I had no idea what he meant by that. As I made my way deeper into the forest, I finally saw a flicker of light through the trees. I approached carefully, my heart pounding in my chest. What I saw was a clearing where a single, ancient stone ruin stood. The sight of it was incredible. It was a historical site that had never been documented. I took a deep breath. This was it. I had to climb the stone ruin to find the treasure. As I scaled the slick, mossy rocks, I found a small alcove near the top. Inside, I found a single piece of parchment, and I could barely make out the writing. It said, "The treasure isn't gold or jewels, it's the last song of the Emberwood." The song was the final clue to the mystery. The harmonic chord was a specific melody, a combination of notes, not a physical object. The black dust wasn't powdered coal but a rare pigment, a form of ground coal used to trace the final notes on the parchment which would light up as if by magic. I finally understood. The last song of Emberwood was a magical spell to ward off evil spirits, and it would only be unlocked by those who understood its true purpose. I used the pigment to trace the notes on the parchment and they began to glow. A magical light enveloped the clearing, and I heard a beautiful, melodic choir of voices singing the last song of Emberwood. The clack, the group of ghostly spirits that had guarded the treasure, was finally at peace. They had been trapped here for centuries, waiting for someone to find a clue and release them. The check for my troubles was a sense of peace, a feeling of closure that my grandfather had finally passed on. I would now be able to cite a primary source about this place, and I would be able to return to the world with a new understanding of this place. I finally understood that the real treasure was not the gold or jewels I had expected, but the feeling of peace that came with finally understanding my grandfather's final gift. Vocabulary notes. Cloze, noun, a test in which words have been removed from a text and the participant has to replace them. It's often used as a way to assess language comprehension. Example, my grandfather's letter was a difficult cloze test of sorts, a puzzle I had been trying to solve for weeks. Similar words, fill in the blanks, gap fill, completion exercise. Clack, noun, a group of people hired to applaud or heckle a performer. In a broader sense, it can refer to a group of sycophantic followers. Example, the clack, the group of ghostly spirits that had guarded the treasure, was finally at peace. Similar words, clique, coterie, entourage, fan club. Clime, noun, a region considered with reference to its climate. It often has a poetic or literary feel. Example, the clime was unforgiving, bitter wind whipping through the ancient trees of Emberwood. Similar words, climate, region, zone, sphere. Coarse, adjective, rough or harsh in texture. It can also mean rude or vulgar. Example, inside, a strange, dark powder like powdered coal filled it. He also left me a note saying, "Bring back what is due," and on the back of the envelope, a small note read, "Check your spelling and the check will be clear." I had no idea what he meant by that. Similar words: rough, abrasive, gritty, harsh. Cite, verb, to quote or refer to a source of information. It's often used when giving credit to someone else's work or providing evidence. Example: I would now be able to cite a primary source about this place, and I would be able to return to the world with a new understanding of this place. Similar words: quote, reference, mention, allude to. Story written by Gemini Pro AI. Image created by Gemini Pro AI. To read all the stories in full, please go to www.steveuk.blog. Thank you.
All right, today we're jumping headfirst into a mystery. It's a quest, really. One that's all wrapped up in a riddle, designed to help us untangle some of the most confusing words in the English language. And it all kicks off with a single, very strange note. So this is where our story starts. A grandfather leaves this note behind. Check your spelling and the check will be clear. Now right away you hear two words that sound exactly the same but mean totally different things. It's kind of the perfect example of how English can sometimes feel like a puzzle you have to solve. And that's really the big question here, isn't it? How can one tiny little letter, or a slightly different spelling, completely flip the meaning of a sentence? This isn't just some boring grammar lesson, though. It's all about understanding context. And, believe it or not, it's the key to the treasure we're hunting today. Okay, Section 1, a puzzle in words. To get started, we're not going to just look at a list of definitions. No, that's not how we do it. We're going to dive into a story that turns vocabulary into a real adventure. So, let's join our protagonist. They're following this mysterious letter from their grandfather, leading them deep into the old, eerie Emberwood forest. The mission? Find a hidden treasure. But, as you can probably guess, the path is anything but simple. The story kicks off by describing the forest's brutal climb. You know, this is such a cool word choice. They could have just said climate, right? But using clime, it just sounds more poetic, more literary. It immediately paints this picture of a harsh, almost magical place. And get this, the letter talks about a miserable course, which is the path they have to take. But it also mentions a coarse leather pouch, something rough you can feel. One word is about the journey, the other is about an object. It's a fantastic way to show how easily you can mix these up if you're only hearing them spoken out loud. So it turns out the key to this whole quest, the treasure map itself, is actually hidden inside the grandfather's confusing letter. It's not just a bunch of directions, it's a real test of understanding. And our hero describes the letter perfectly with this line. It's a cloze test. Now that might be a new term for some of you, but trust me, it is the absolute heart of this entire puzzle. So a cloze test is basically a fill-in-the-blanks exercise. I'm sure you've done tons of these in language classes. You have to use the words around the blank, the context, to figure out what's missing. And the grandfather's letter is exactly that, a series of riddles you can only solve by paying really close attention. All right, Section 3, cracking the code. Now that we know what kind of test we're facing, it's time to solve these riddles right alongside our hero. Let's do this. Okay, the first big riddle mentions a harmonic chord that's supposed to unlock the path. But what kind of chord are we talking about here? Is it something you can tie a knot with, or is it something you hear? And the big clue is right there in the spelling. A chord with an H is all about music, while a chord without it is just a piece of rope. See? The letter is guiding our hero with a song, not with a string. That one little letter changes everything. Following this musical hint, our hero stumbles upon something pretty incredible. The ruins of an ancient building hidden deep in the forest. It's a huge discovery that no one knew was there. And this discovery gives us another awesome pair of words to look at. The ruin is a historical site, a physical place. But later, the protagonist can cite this discovery in a research paper, reference it as a source. One is the location, the other is the action of talking about it. So the final puzzle in the letter comes down to one very old word. The treasure will be revealed by the final clue. That's spelled C-L-E-W. Have you ever seen it spelled like that before? It's pretty rare these days. Clue is basically an old-fashioned way of spelling clue. And get this, it originally meant a ball of thread, like the kind you'd use to find your way out of a maze. In our story, the clue is the song itself, written on a hidden scroll. It's the thread that finally unravels the whole mystery. Pretty cool, huh? So, we have all the pieces. The true nature of the treasure is about to be revealed. And you might have guessed it by now, but it's not gold coins or shiny jewels. And now the final pieces just fall right into place. Our hero finds the parchment and realizes that the black dust mentioned in the letter is actually a special pigment. They use it to trace the musical notes. And as they do, the score starts to glow, and this incredible melody just fills the air. As the song plays, a choir of ghosts appears. The story calls them the clack. Now, a clack is usually a group of people literally hired to applaud at a show. But here it's used in this beautiful, almost heartbreaking way to describe these spirits who've been waiting for centuries to hear their last song and finally be free. And this brings us full circle, right back to that very first riddle. Check your spelling and the check will be clear. The reward, the payment, the check, it wasn't money at all. It was this powerful feeling of peace, of setting those spirits free, and finally understanding the grandfather's incredible last gift. So after that whole journey through the Emberwood, what's our treasure? Well, it's a new, much deeper understanding of some very specific and very powerful words. So let's look at the treasure we unlocked. We navigated the harsh clime and the tricky coarse. We learned the difference between a musical chord and a simple chord, a historic site and the act to cite something. We even learned the puzzle maker's tools, the cloze test, the final clue, and that ghostly clock. And it all led to the final check, a feeling of peace. So if you take one thing away from our quest today, let it be this. Context is absolutely everything. In any book you read, any conversation you have, it's the information surrounding the words that gives them their true power. That's the key that unlocks what they really mean. Which really leaves us with one last question to think about. If a single story can hide all this meaning, just imagine what other treasures and secrets are just waiting to be found in the words that we use every single day. That's something worth exploring.